Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a reaction where I am going to be reacting to some scary stories. Now, I haven't done a reaction video in several weeks, let alone a scary one at that. And I like scary stuff a whole lot, so I think that this is going to be awesome, and I'm going to be doing more reaction videos in the future too. It's not just going to be gameplays. It's going to be other stuff as well. I've done some challenges in the past. So let's get started and see how this is going to work out.
I used to work as a third-party contractor in the convention area of the Swan and Dolphin Resort/Hotel. Sometimes we would have to be there at really odd hours for convention setup/teardown. One morning, I was there about 30 minutes before the union laborers, probably around 3:30 a.m.-ish. I also would like to point out that I used a couple of dating apps at the time, Grindr, Scruff, and Growler. The apps I use also have that location indicator that tells you how far away they were. All of a sudden, some guy whose profile was blank except for a blurry close-up of his shirt, collar, and neck started blowing up my phone on two different apps at the same time. I basically replied that I was at work and busy and may be available to possibly chat later. He started sending really creepy messages like, "Oh, I see you working," and other semi-stalkerish messages. I shut down the apps. I have a small office located across from one of the convention halls. I holed up in my office and told the union guys to check in with me there when they arrived. Once they got there, I felt more safe, so I set up my desk out on the convention hall's floor and just continued with my work. Around noon, I launched up the apps again to pass time during my lunch break. As if he had been waiting for this moment, he started chatting me up again from locations like 200 feet away. I told him he seemed a bit creepy and that I wasn't interested. He stopped, or so I thought. A few weeks later, I had a late night teardown around 10 p.m.-ish. As soon as I got to my office, he appeared again and started messaging me. His messages didn't seem creepy at first. Just simple things like, "Hey, how are you? You busy?" I got really creeped out and blocked him. He would then just create new profiles.
Okay. That is really strange. Whenever someone is stalking you, whether it's a guy or a girl, and it's really late at night, that makes it a whole lot worse when it's 10 or 11 p.m. It's close to midnight, let alone being midnight at all. It's oh my wow, it's even worse. Whenever it's day, it's not as bad because at least you can actually see better, and you won't have to go to bed later on. You won't have to go to bed as soon as you get off of work, unless you are patrolling at night. But seriously, come on, a stalker texting you or even talking to you on the phone, just watching you from afar, or rather they're just standing somewhere still like a statue, and they are glancing at you, or they're glaring at you from afar, and it's just really creepy. Have any of you guys ever had something like that happen to you? Just whether you're working, or you're at school, or you're even in your own home, and there's someone stalking you. Someone is just randomly texting you or randomly calling you, just letting you know exactly what you're doing, and all of a sudden you're just like freaking out. You're wondering who that person is and how do they know what you're doing at that very moment. Let's continue to listen more to the story.
And continued to message me for months. The messages quickly transitioned after the first time I blocked him. He switched to saying things like, "You can't block me every time. I know where you work so I can find you again. Why won't you answer me? I deserve an answer." Later, he would just send creepy messages like, "I found you again. It looks like you're working hard. Are you alone right now?" I always believed in the "don't feed the trolls" adage and refused to engage with him, blocking him every time. He would generally only message me when I was working very early or very late, with occasional day messages while I was working the convention center floor. Convention centers are giant, wide open spaces when no events are going on, which can really add to the creepiness. But what's worse is when there were events happening. I mean, the floor is crowded with people. Hundreds, if not thousands of people, all of which could be this odd mystery man. I never really felt safe, but I can't describe the heart-sinking feeling I had when, in late July, he sent me the final messages that sent me to report him to hotel security and my own company seeking help. Here's where the unexplained part comes in for me. After putting up with this for a long time, he ended it abruptly by sending me photos of me at my desk in my office from the first day he messaged me.
What?
Let me describe my office a bit for you. My office is tiny, maybe 30 to 35 square feet. We have 2 desks set up on one side with computers and an empty table in the corner opposite my desk. The rest of the office is filing cabinets and a printer opposite the empty table. The photos seem to be coming from a part of the office where we have the extra table. It's generally an empty table without any electronics on it that we use for anyone visiting the office or to lay out floor plans. I was absolutely freaked out, to say the least, but I can't imagine how he had gotten the photos. After turning over the photos, all of the messaging abruptly stopped just as suddenly as it had started. I was a 28-year-old Army veteran, and I can honestly say that I wasn't nearly as brave as I thought I would be in a situation like that. In that moment, I turned into a child afraid of letting my feet hang out of the covers for fear that a monster would grab whatever exposed portion he could get a hold of. The thought that a stranger was stalking me from an app is terrifying. But what scares me even more is the possibility that it could have been somebody who I regularly pass by at work. Someone who makes small talk with me and says hi in passing, who then the next minute is sending me anonymous creepy messages. After all, I never did find out who it was, and I guess I'll never know.
I think it's best not to know. Isn't that a nice sight?
This happened in June of 2016. I have celiac disease, a disease where gluten is detected as an allergy and your body attacks itself trying to kill the gluten. Thus, my intestines are extremely damaged and sometimes bloody or infected. The reason I was in the hospital was because of me being a dumbass and eating a bunch of bread, so my intestines got really messed up. Basically, I had to go to the hospital to get some pictures taken of my intestines. This story takes place when they were extremely damaged and bloody. I was spending the night at the hospital with an IV filled with medicine to help me get better quicker, or something like that. I don't really remember.
Okay. One of the creepiest places to ever have something happen to you is, in fact, a hospital. Because for one thing, if you're helpless and there's no one around to keep you safe or to keep you company, then you're pretty much screwed for the most part. Let's be real about this. And not just for the fact that anyone could come in and just do whatever and say that they know you personally, that they're a friend or family member or someone of that knows you personally for whatever whatever the relationship you have between you and that person, that they may just lie about and make up so that way they can actually get to you and do whatever they want or say whatever they want just to give you a hard time. Can you imagine that? And in a hospital. Anything can happen in a hospital. Jeez. Hopefully they have good security now. After this turn of events. Let's see what happens.
IV was attached to my stomach. I was half asleep and it was around midnight. My dad had left about an hour earlier and I was there all by myself. The hospital has a door with a window and a yellow light from the hallway was preventing me from sleeping. There was a sound of footsteps right by my door and I opened my eyes. I thought it was a nurse or something checking in on me, but it was some guy. He looked like a dad. Middle-aged, glasses, a flannel shirt. He looked really normal. But he wasn't my dad, as my dad is way paunchier, and it wasn't a nurse since nurses had their scrubs on at all times. He looked like a visitor. I was a little freaked out, but I wasn't scared yet, as I don't get scared easily. He opened my door very quietly. "Hello?" I asked, and the guy looked around nervously. He put his finger to his lips in the cartoon famous shh face.
What?
His face was stoic and his eyes looked wild. I would have either punched him or ran, but I'm connected to a liquid bag and I have a huge throbbing in my stomach. I had been under an operation of sorts earlier and I was not allowed to get up. "I'll be quick," he muttered. He quietly moved around my cot and crouched down. I didn't take my eyes off of him. Then he unplugged my IV. I was livid and I was terrified. What the did he think he was doing? The IV stopped making the humming sounds as it stopped being run with electricity. These things are not meant to be unplugged. Their plugs are tough so that they don't get unplugged. He then looked at me dead in the face and said, "You." He flipped me off and left without another word. Looking back at it, it's almost kind of funny the way he said it. Like a teenager flipping off his parent, but at 15 years old, I didn't think that it was funny. I was still in complete shock for 3 seconds before I screamed bloody murder. A nurse was in my room very quickly after that. I told her what happened and she just stared at me. It wasn't until she noticed he unplugged my IV that she freaked out. She plugged it back in, and I remember she stayed with me until either morning or until I fell back asleep. I don't remember what came first. There was a lot of shouting from the hall, and every time I tried to speak up, she shushed me. Eventually, I fell asleep. I wouldn't have told this story if my dad hadn't told me what happened after. Somehow, this story came up recently, and I kinda chuckled about it.
Great, it gets worse.
My dad was quiet before he asked me if he ever told me about the end of that story. I said no. My dad told me a guy had come into the doctor's office asking to visit his friend who had gone under surgery. They didn't let him in since he was asleep and it was way past visiting hours. This man didn't listen and somehow got past the people at the front desk. They also didn't know that this guy had some kind of knife. He cut 4 people's medical wires and unplugged my IV. There was also some other guy who was sleeping, and he unplugged that guy's IV too. That guy went into a coma. A coma. So the police caught this guy and put him into a mental hospital. I was shaken. I had really come into contact with a full-on crazy person. What would he have done to me if I had been sleeping? I don't know. Ever since I talked to my dad, I wanted to tell this story. It may not have been very scary to anyone but me, but I was so vulnerable at the time. Who knows what he could have done if I was any more vulnerable. I hope he's getting the care he needs, or something. Like I just said, this might not make any sense or be very scary, but it freaked me the f*** out. I don't have a very strong end or moral to the story, but I don't really trust that hospital anymore. Not after some crazy guy sneaks in right under their noses.
See, that's exactly what I was talking about with the security and everything. The people at the front desk or whoever's in charge of letting people in to see patients, they need to be better with their security. That's exactly what I was talking about before the story. Just the security and just making sure that no one unwanted or unwelcome goes into a patient's room, not knowing what they could do. Whew. Okay. Well, it's pretty creepy, huh?
Let me set the scene for you. I was 7, and my mother was dating a man with a daughter who was about 15. Her name was Christy. While she didn't live with us, she did stay with us on some weekends. The reason this is important will come into play a little later.
Like that
I grew up in a moderately isolated area in the South. My mother's house is on about 90 acres, most of it being heavily
Scare the
wooded.
crap out of me if I saw that.
For the most part, it was quiet. The type of place most people didn't lock their doors and everyone knows each other. It was quiet until one sequence of events shook my community to its core. There was a man just 2 streets over from mine who murdered his girlfriend's entire family, including her. It was in their home over a dinner about 2 weeks before this event took place. It was also learned later that he had also murdered his mother and father in their home, as they were found after his girlfriend's family was. He hadn't been caught, and the local police were working with police in Tennessee as there had been reportings of people sighting him there. My mother had gotten a security system installed just to ensure our home was properly secured. We had alarms on every window and door in our house. On this Saturday, my mother got called into work as she was an apartment manager and there was an emergency that she needed to tend to. Her boyfriend had gone to work early that morning. My mother was very, very nervous about leaving, and due to the nature of the emergency, she thought it would be best that Christy and I stay home where we were safe. Safe, so she thought. She reluctantly left and let us know that her cell phone was always going to be on her if we needed her. Christy and I promptly set the alarm and made sure that all the doors were locked. My mother had been gone about an hour and we were deep into a Disney movie and pizza. Suddenly, the alarm started blaring. Christy and I jumped up to see what was going on. On the way to the alarm, you have to pass a very large sliding glass door. What we saw there left us frozen. There was a man prying our door open with a crowbar. He saw us, made eye contact, and quickly ran off into the woods behind my mother's house. I will never forget what he looked like, or the sinister look he had in his eyes.
Who would?
We called the police, and then we called my mother, who had already been alerted by the alarm company. My mother actually arrived before the police did due to how isolated we really were. When we described the man to the police, they immediately knew that it was the man that they were looking for. Of course, there was a massive investigation that day of the property and the woods surrounding us.
Oh, wonderful.
In the woods, they found cigarette butts, lots of canned food, soda bottles, and a makeshift tent made from a tarp. The man had been living behind us the entire time, and even had been stealing food from our trash.
What?
When he was arrested, which was a few hours after the incident, he had admitted to watching our family to learn our habits, knowing that he could take advantage of the house when no one was there. Even now, as an adult, this event still follows me. Just goes to show that you really never know who's watching you.
Exactly. Okay, well, I think that's going to be it for that. Oh wow. That's not as creepy as the first two, but it still wasn't normal. Not at all. So anyways, that's gonna be it for this video. If you want to see the fourth story, I kind of short before that happened. I'll put the link in the description below, so that way you guys can listen to the last story yourselves. But oh my gosh, all those things that happened just comes to show that you gotta be careful about where you are and who you're with, because you could be helpless and not be able to do anything to defend yourself, and you might as well consider yourself a dead person. But this is really weird, isn't it? Oh my gosh. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you guys were scared at all of these stories, give it a thumbs up. If you liked this video, do the same thing. Hit that like button. And if you enjoyed the reaction that I gave you guys, there wasn't much of one. I just kind of explained things that happened, of course. Then still give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video at all, still give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more reaction videos like this one or any others, then please subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.